this video we're going to go over some important concepts that should help us understand how PGP works. We're also going to explain some terminology, and we're going to compare them to each other because some terms may seem similar but have a really different meaning and can cause some confusion. So let's start with PGP. So what does PGP mean? Well, there is a piece of software called PGP, and it stands for Pretty Good Privacy, and it helps us encrypt files. But also PGP sometimes refers to OpenPGP, and OpenPGP is a standard or a protocol, and this standard helps us share encrypted messages, share files having digital signatures, and create digital certificates. So next is GPG, and GPG stands for GNU PG, and GNU PG is a piece of software. It's a free and open source software, and GPG implements OpenPGP. So GPG helps us encrypt messages, make digital signatures, and make digital certificates complying to the OpenPGP standard. And GPG is it comes pre-installed in Ubuntu distros. Okay. So next, let's go over the 4 key concepts of information security. So let's say this is Anne. She has a message, and she wants to send that message to Bob, and she hands over the message to Eve, and Eve gives the message to Bob. If Anne and Bob want to achieve confidentiality, this means that they want to make sure that Eve cannot read the message along the way. And this of course is achieved by encryption, so Anne should encrypt the message. Next, if Anne and Bob want to achieve integrity, this means that they want to make sure that the message reaches Bob without any modifications, so Eve cannot have modified the message along the way. And for authenticity, Bob should make sure that it is Anne who sent the message and not anybody else, because Eve can pretend that Anne sent her a message and did not. So authenticity is to achieve authenticity, this means that Bob should make sure that Anne sent the message. And for non-repudiation, if Anne sends a message to Bob, she shouldn't be able to deny that she has sent that message. So this should protect Bob against Anne if she decides to do any malicious actions, not Eve. So if Anne sends a message, she should not be able to deny it. There should be proof. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Next, symmetric encryption and asymmetric encryption. So for symmetric encryption, this should be fairly easy. So Anne has a message. She's going to encrypt her message using a key, and a key is just a value or a password that only, well, it's a password. So then she sends the message to Eve, only the encrypted message, and Eve then sends the message to Bob, and Bob should use the same key to decrypt the message. So this means that Anne should somehow give Bob that key. So she should pass the key to Bob using, well, there are plenty of ways to do that, but the important thing is that the same key is used to encrypt and decrypt the message. Next is asymmetric encryption, and the difference lies in the key. So for Anne to send Bob a message, Bob should have a key pair. So a key pair is a public key and a private key. So they are two values that are mathematically related. So the public key and the private key, so these are wands because they do not behave like keys anymore. So the blue wand can be used to apply an effect, and the green wand can be used to reverse it, and vice versa. If the green wand applies an effect, only the blue wand can reverse it, and the same key cannot reverse its own effect. So when a green wand applies an effect, the green wand cannot be used to remove that effect. Okay. So Anne has a message and she wants to send Bob that message. Bob should generate a key pair and give Anne his public key, and he should keep his private key secret. Anne uses Bob's public key to encrypt the message. Then she sends the encrypted message to Eve, and Eve sends the message to Bob. And then Bob uses his private key to remove the green wand's effect, and only he has his private key. So this is how asymmetric encryption works. I hope it makes sense. So next is checksumming and digital signatures. So checksumming is a way to achieve integrity. So Anne has her message, so she uses any popular checksumming algorithm, let's say SHA-256, and she calculates a hash, and this hash is almost unique to that message. Okay, so if the message changes anyway, the hash will change as well. So Anne can send the message to Eve, and Eve can send the message to Bob, and Bob can also calculate SHA-256 hash on the message, and he should compare the message to the hash to the hash that Anne generated, and if the hash is the same, the file should not have been modified. But the problem is, how are they going to share the hash? So checksumming is not really used to provide security against somebody. It's only used for integrity checks for files. You can sometimes see when you download a file a hash listed beside it, so that you can verify the file after you have downloaded it. Anyway, another stronger method is digital signatures, and it helps achieve integrity in a better way as well as authenticity. So Anne has her message and has a public and a private key pair. Okay, so she uses her private key to generate a signature, and this signature is attached to the message, and she can send the message, she can give the message to Eve, and Eve can give the message to Bob. And remember that Anne should distribute her public key everywhere, so everybody should have Anne's public key. So everybody should maintain what is called a key ring, and a key ring is a list of public keys. So when Bob receives a message with a signature, what he should do is he should try all keys in his key pair, in his key ring, and only one public key should validate that message. So when Bob receives a message from Anne, and that message of course has a signature, he tries all public keys in his keyring, and Anne's keyring verifies that message. So this way he can be sure that it is Anne who sent the message, and that is because only Anne has her private key, so only she can generate messages that validate with her public key. So this provides integrity as well as authenticity. So a digital signature behaves like a checksum, but it depends on the message and the private key. So we generate a signature depending on the message and the private key. So if the message changes, the signature changes, and if it's the same message but somebody else is signing the message, so the signature should be different because he's using his private key to sign that message. So this is the concept of digital signatures. Now for the final concept of digital certificates. So first of all, let's agree that a public key is a file. So like any other file, the public key itself can be signed. So a person can have a public key and he can give his public key to somebody else, and that other person can sign the public key using that other person's private key. So a public key is a file just like any other file, and it can be signed. Next, let's talk about PGP's public keys. So the PGP public key is not really, well, let's call it a key certificate. And a PGP key certificate carries a public key and other metadata, so not just a public key. So the key certificate carries a public key and a name and an email address and a list of signatures. So it carries lots of metadata, and we're concerned about the name, the email address, and the list of signatures. Okay? So this is a PGP key certificate. Now for the coming diagram, if there is X, if there is Y, and there is an arrow pointing from X to Y, this means that X has signed Y's public key, and that means that X has used his private key to sign Y's public key. Okay? So let's move on. Okay, so let's focus on this part. So Anne, Bob, and Dan. Anne has a key pair, Bob has a key pair, Dan has a key pair. And a public key in PGP is a key certificate. So the public key holds the public key certificate holds a public key, a name, and an email, and a list of signatures. So Anne and Bob trust each other. So Anne goes to Bob, "Hey, please sign my public key." And Bob uses his private key to sign Anne's public key, and Anne adds Bob's signature to her public key. So for example here, Anne has Bob's signature and Cody's signature on her public key. And then when Anne acquires a new signature, Anne should redistribute her public key certificate with the new signatures. So if she has uploaded her public key to a key server, she should re-upload her public key. Bob does the same. Bob takes his public key, tells Anne to sign his key, and signs his key, and so Bob has Anne's signature on his key, and then he should share his new public key, or his public key, with the new signature. Okay? The point is, Bob and Dan. Dan does not know Bob. Bob sends a message to Dan. Dan does not know Bob, but he knows Anne, okay? So Dan is Anne's friend, but he does not know Bob. So Bob sends a message to Dan. Dan receives a new message, and it has a signature. So Dan brings up his key ring. He tries public keys on the message, and the public key that verifies is Bob's public key. Well, he does not know Bob, but he checks Bob's public key and he finds Anne's signature on Bob's public key. And he knows Anne, and he knows her public key, and he trusts Anne. So he can decide to trust Bob because he trusts Anne. And this is what is called a trust web, or a trust network. Okay? And this is how it works. So, finally, this is Cody. And Cody can be a really trusted person, or he can be what is known as a certification authority. Okay? And a certification authority signs public keys so let me explain this. Anne goes to Cody and presents her public, she can present her national ID and her public key. So the certification authority authenticates the identity of Anne and then signs her public key. and so does Bob, and so does Dan, and so does Ford, and so on. So people having Cody signature, we can know that they are, they have presented their national ID, and we can decide to trust them. We can also decide to trust people who are trusted by people who we trust. And this is how a trust web works. So that's it. I hope things got clear. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.